the hump of the Quran, the longest chapter of the Quran, the chapter in the Quran that contains the greatest ayah of the Quran, the chapter of the Quran, the surah of the Quran that contains the last ayah that was revealed to our beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Until the day of judgment, no one will ever receive the wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, the Khatam al-Anbiya, the seal of the prophets. So last time we looked at the ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says regarding the munafiqeen, في قلوبهم مرض فزادهم الله مرضا ولهم عذاب أليم بما كانوا يكذبون. Talking about the hypocrites, talking about the two-faced people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about them, في قلوبهم مرض. In their hearts is a marad, a disease. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases this marad, this disease. وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared for them عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ, a painful punishment. بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْذِبُونَ. Because of what? What's the reason for all of that? Because they are liars. They are two-faced people. So just summarizing with regards to some of the points that we went over, one thing that the scholars tell us about here is that this word, adhabun alim, the description of the punishment as alim, tells us that the punishment reserved for the munafiqeen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is quantifying it and giving us a measure of that it is a painful punishment. And we talked about and reflected that, in this world, when we go through some pain sometimes, you hit the hammer on your finger, or some people that go through terminal illnesses where they're in constant pain. The phenomenon normally is that after some time, subhanAllah, the body starts getting used to that pain. And it hurts more initially or the first day, and after some time the body starts getting used to it, subhanAllah. But the scholars quantify that this alim that's described here, subhanAllah, it can be described as like a wrenching type of pain. So imagine if you have your hand or a part of your body in a wrench, and the wrench is closed on that hand, and you feel the pain, and you get used to that pain, but it doesn't decrease because it keeps wrenching harder and harder and harder. So it's a pain that never decreases, subhanAllah. That's the kind of pain, subhanAllah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described that is reserved for the munafiqeen. And we looked at last time, subhanAllah, that from a physiological point of view, what is lying? Where does it occur? And we looked at the ayat in the Quran, and Surah Al-Rahman and Surah Al-Alaqah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifically quantifies that the lying occurs in nasiba, in the forehead, in the forelock area. And we looked at how, subhanAllah, and also our beloved Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he was making the dua, and specifically the dua of sorrow and anxiety, he used to say, the translation of which is that, "O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I am your servant, and I am the slave of your servant," meaning Adam alayhi salam, "and I am the slave of your maidservant," meaning Hawa alayhi salam. And he said, my forelock, my forehead is in your hands, is in your authority, subhanAllah. So how amazing that the Quran and the hadith of our beloved Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam is pinpointing the exact location, precisely and concisely, of where the decision to say the truth or lie occurs, and that's in the forelock. And we talked about how there's studies, MRIs, nowadays in university in the Southern California, and Dr. Yang, I quoted all those different articles that are on NPR. You're welcome to go look at it yourself with regards to just doing simple Google search, the line forelock NPR, and you can read those articles and how the scientists tell us, subhanAllah, that is exactly the location where lying occurs, and that's in the forelock area. So subhanAllah, how precise and how concise the words of the Quran, how truthful the words of the Quran and the words of our beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to pinpoint the exact location with regards to, from a physiological point of view, where lying occurs. Now, with regards to lying itself, subhanallah, let's look now how our beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam tied lying to the act of hypocrisy, because we also talked about last time how the scholars of Islam quantified that really the foundation, the bedrock, the thing that hypocrisy rests on is the act of lying. So this is an act, and the reason obviously we want to study it as believers is because we want to stay far, far away from this trait. And you'll see the scary hadith and ayat in the Quran, and also we talked about how Ibn Taymiyyah, subhanAllah, quantifies that wherever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran mentions hypocrisy, He mentions lying, and vice versa. When He mentions lying, He mentions hypocrisy. So they go hand in hand, these traits. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam quantified to us in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim in a hadith that describes the characteristic or the traits of hypocrisy. He said, the signs of a hypocrite, munafiq, are three. Number one, when the person speaks, they lie. Number two, when the person makes a promise, they break the promise. And number three, when they are entrusted, meaning like they're given an amana, a trust, they are disloyal to that trust. SubhanAllah. And also another hadith that's reported by Umar that gives us a more clear example of hypocrisy. Rasulullah ﷺ said there are 4 traits that whoever possesses them, these 4 traits, is a pure hypocrite. So this is where I'm talking about to myself, and I'm reminding myself and you, brothers and sisters in Islam, have a check mark. Let's look at ourselves. Examine, do we have these qualities, or do we have some of these qualities? Rasulullah ﷺ said that whoever has these qualities is a pure hypocrite. Number 1, he said, when he is entrusted, excuse me, I want to read further. There are 4 things that whoever possesses them is a pure hypocrite, and whoever possesses one of them possesses a characteristic of a hypocrite until that person abandons this trait. And Rasulullah ﷺ said, when he is entrusted, he is disloyal. So again, if he's given an amana, if he's given a trust, he's disloyal to that trust. When he speaks, this person lies. When he makes a promise, he breaks that promise. And when he argues, this person behaves insolently. Meaning like whenever they're in an argument, they raise their voice, they lose their temper, they start saying all kind of foul language and what have you, in order to make their point, subhanAllah. A believer doesn't have this kind of a trait. That even if we're arguing, we have to argue and dialogue in a humane and in a civilized manner, subhanAllah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us sabr, patience in all conditions, inshallah. So, number 1. So now if we examine these qualities of the hypocrites, the first and foremost thing Rasulullah ﷺ said is that when they speak, they lie. And subhanAllah, this trait with regards to lying, unfortunately, in general, we can say that this is a disease that has penetrated into our ummah, into our communities, and into us as individually, subhanAllah. Unfortunately, even some non-Muslims, they attribute this as a thing to the Muslims. Because us Muslims, astaghfirullah, we've forgotten that it is haram to lie. So we lie, subhanAllah, with regards to our work. We lie in our resumes. We lie to each other. Na'udhu sometimes we lie even against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're not even sure about a knowledge from the Quran or the hadith, and we just splatter it out just to show ourselves sometimes, subhanAllah. We lie, subhanAllah, in the workplace, even in the masjid sometimes. So this is a thing that has come and has penetrated into us. So what is then lying? What is the definition of lying? Simply put it, the scholars say, Lying is to cover the truth. It's as simple as that. For a person who lies all the time, scholars tell us that these people, they've actually lost the taqwa, the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We've forgotten the person who's lying all the time, they forget that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ar-Raqib. He's watching every single second. And this is both in public and in private, subhanAllah, this trait that we have to stay away from. Why do people lie? The scholars mention two reasons. Either a person is going to gain something from lying, and they're causing something else to be hidden from it. Or they are afraid of getting busted on a situation, and so they're afraid of getting exposed, and so they use a lie to cover up their mistake. And subhanAllah, in one very scary hadith, Rasulullah even quantified to us about this action with regards to lying, that a believer doesn't lie. A Sahabi came to Rasulullah and asked him the question, Ya Rasulullah, is it possible that a believer could steal? Is it possible that a believer could steal? Rasulullah said, yes, it is possible. Then the Sahaba asked Rasulullah the question and said, is it possible that a believer could commit zina, adultery? Rasulullah said, it is possible. Yes, it's possible. Then the Sahabi asked Rasulullah the last question, is it possible for a believer to tell a lie? And Rasulullah said, no, it's not possible for a believer to tell a lie. Now this hadith is kind of dangerous if we don't understand it correctly, subhanAllah. The scholars, they quantify that Rasulullah is not saying that it's okay to steal and it's okay to commit adultery. Those are both kabir, major sins. What the scholars quantify and explain to us here from this hadith, that it might be possible that someone, because of necessity, extreme necessity, falls into the sin of stealing. For example, someone lost their job. They go around, they're asking their friends, their family, everyone, please, I can't feed my kids. They're starving. They're going to die. I can't pay my rent. I'm going to be kicked out. I'm going to be homeless. We're going to die. So what he does, his body and his situation, his extreme circumstances might push him to commit to steal, subhanAllah. This is because of the body's urge, the needs of the human being. Similarly, the scholars, they quantify with regards to adultery, subhanAllah, especially, living in this non-Muslim environment. You're exposed to it all the time. You go outside and you see lewd signs. If you have a TV and you're turning it on, may Allah protect us from turning that shaitan on. You see nothing but lewdness and evil and immorality on there. Even in the commercials. You turn on the internet, the difference between a halal website and a haram website is just a few letters. So one's body might push someone to commit adultery. Again, do not understand it to where Rasulullah ﷺ is saying it's okay. It is a kabir guna, sin, and it's haram. It's a major sin. But the point of this hadith it's stressing is that a person, a believer, can never lie. They might fall because of extreme circumstances, because of their situation or their body, in stealing or committing adultery, but they can never lie. And the reason why the scholars mention this is that a believer can never lie because, subhanAllah, first of all, there's no reason to lie. Lying is, there's no purpose for lying. It's not like you're being pushed against a wall or something to lie. Just, we have to, subhanAllah, say the truth. If we make a mistake, own up to the truth. There's nothing pushing us. There's no extenuating circumstances to make us to lie. And if we're in fear of someone or something, then we're only supposed to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the solution when the Shaitan comes and tries to do what's to give us excuses with regards to covering up our mistakes. We're not supposed to do that. We should own up, subhanAllah, with regards to our mistakes, with regards to those circumstances. And with regards to fearing someone or something, we should fear, may Allah give me and you the tawfiq, to fear only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now there are some very extreme cases where the action of lying is allowed in Islam for the believers. The scholars, they quantify that, number one, in a case of war, when you're lying to the enemy, then this is allowed. But I don't think any of us in here are in the position of leading a country or a general in an army or something like that. So that doesn't apply to us, obviously, for the most part. And in the second case, the scholars quantify that if we fib in order to fix a relationship, then this is allowed. Let me give an example. Let's say a husband and a wife, they are getting into a fight, an argument all the time, and they basically separate, and they're almost at the point of divorce. So some brother is going and making effort to go try to amend this relationship. So they go talk to her, they go talk to him, and subhanAllah, it's allowed for him to go and say, I believe truly that your husband wants you back. Even though she might have not explicitly said that after talking, I sincerely think that he wants you back. I believe he feels sorry about the whole situation. He loves you so much. He wants you back. And then he goes back to the wife and says the same thing with regards to, your husband loves you. He wants you back. He wants to make amends. So because of the situation of preventing a divorce, then the scholars mention to fib a little and to try to amend and fix that relationship, then this is allowed. Even between husband and wife. Let's say a brother gets into argument with his wife, and they go at it and they get angry and what have you, and he wants to go and make amends with her. So the scholars mention he can go to her and say, I'm sorry, I was wrong 100% in this situation. You are totally right, honey. Let's make up and move on. And even though in his heart he probably feels, I was only 50% wrong. She was 50% wrong. He can say, for the sake of making amends, he could say, yes, I'm 100% wrong. You were right. Let's move on, subhanAllah, in this situation. So in these extreme circumstances, or in circumstance with regards to making amends, the scholar mentioned that subhanAllah, one can fib. But again, lying, subhanAllah, there's no need to do it. Sometimes people lie because of greed. We talked about there's no need for lying. I'll give you one example. I was listening to a scholar. He was saying, let's say your brother comes and says, I'm going to take you out for lunch. Have you had lunch? So this person, subhanAllah, is greedy. He already had lunch, and because he wants to have lunch again, he says, no, I haven't had lunch yet. So he lies, subhanAllah, to go and to have, because he's greedy, he wants to eat again. He doesn't just own up to it. Yeah, I've eaten lunch, but I don't mind eating again. But he's, in order to make sure the brother takes him, he lies about that and says, no, I haven't eaten lunch. Yeah, sure, I'll come with you, subhanAllah. Or another example, let's say you're passing out Eid. You're giving a gift out during Eid. It's a big family, mashallah. Assalamu alaikum. Here you go. And you come back to a brother again. Did I give you the Eid? You don't remember. And because the person is greedy, says, no, you didn't give me my Eid yet. Are you sure? No, I didn't. So he lies about that, subhanAllah. So again, there's no need for us to lie. Sometimes, again, if we're in a situation where we've made a mistake and we fear a person or a situation, the scholars again say, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fear nothing else but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I close, subhanAllah, before I sit down, with this ayah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we learn the qaida, the principle in the Quran, that one of the traits of the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised forgiveness and the great reward is those people who are truthful. In the 33rd chapter of the Quran, ayah number 35, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the following. Listen to the word of the truthfulness that's buried in here with regards to these 11 traits that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has quantified as people of forgiveness and people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared a great reward for. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إن المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات والقانتين والقانتات والصادقين والصادقات والصابرين والصابرات والخاشعين والخاشعات والمتصدقين والمتصدقات والصائمين والصائمات والحافظين فروجهم والحافظات والذاكرين الله كثيرا والذاكرات أعد الله لهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما. Which translates to mean, verily, without a doubt, Allah has prepared for the believing men, for the Muslim men and women, for the believing men and women, for men and women who are obedient, for men and women who are truthful, who say the truth, who are sadiqeen, for men and women who humble themselves, khashi'een, wal khashi'at, for men and women who give sadaqah, for men and women who fast, for men and women who protect and guard their chastity, for men and women who remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala much, for them Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared forgiveness and a great reward. بارك الله لنا ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعنا وإياكم بالآيات وذكر الحكيم إنه تعالى جواد كريم ملك بر رؤوف رحيم. Let us ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. Astaghfirullah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد في الأولين اللهم صل على محمد في الآخرين اللهم بارك على محمد في الأولين اللهم بارك على محمد في الآخرين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. I'm about to proceed. So inshallah I'm going to close with a quick story, a true event that occurred in our history that inshallah will give us, bidnillah, give me and you motivation to always be of those people who are sincere, and those people who are sincere are truthful people, subhanallah. In 1707 CE, Common Era, there was a battle that occurred between the Muslims and the Roman Byzantine Empire in the city of Idrin in Turkey, the scholars tell us. In this city, the Muslims laid siege to it, and it was a well-fortified city. It had a big defensive wall. So they basically laid siege to it, and for 2 months they weren't able to penetrate its defenses. And then after 2 months, the general in this, the Muslim general in this battle, his name was Mas Salama. He got word from his soldiers that they were able to make a little hole through the wall of the enemy's defenses, and they asked for a volunteer. They asked the general to ask for a volunteer that's small enough that will go through the hole, fight the enemy on the inside, open the door, so that inshallah the Muslims will be victorious. So the general asked for this volunteer, and that night someone volunteered. And this person, subhanallah, in this battle was able to penetrate through that hole, fight the people on the inside, open the door, and subhanallah, the Muslims were able to go in and become victorious. So you can imagine, subhanallah, the general was ecstatic. He was overwhelmed. Wow, mashallah, alhamdulillah, look at this brave soldier, the soldier that went into this hole. So he sent word for this man to come forward. And subhanallah, the man didn't show up. The second day, he sent word again. The person that went through the hole, let him come forward. Let that person come forward. The guy didn't show up. Soldier the hole. The third day, the same thing. He sent word, he sent a message out to his army, this person must come forward. The person didn't show up. Subhanallah. In this rawayah, it's mentioned that on the fourth day, a person came into the tent of the general, and he was cloaked. He had a cloak over his face, and he said, I have word of the soldier of the whole. And then this general, he stood up. Wow, what's the word? Tell me what's going on. He said, I have news of the soldier of the whole that entered into the hole, and he wants to put 3 conditions before he reveals himself. And the general stood up. No problem. What are the conditions? He said, number 1, the first condition is that you will not compensate him for that act. You won't recognize him. You won't pay him or whatever. Number 2, he said that you will not tell anyone about him. You have to keep it a secret. And number 3, he said you will never ask for him again. SubhanAllah. So the general said, I accept these conditions. This man, SubhanAllah, that had this cloak over his face, he pulled his scarf down. He said, I went into that hole only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for nothing else. And he turned around and he walked away, and the general never saw him again. And it's mentioned in this rawayah that this general, until he died, he would always be raising his hand up and making dua, Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on the day of judgment, let me be resurrected to be a companion of the soldier of the whole, subhanAllah. So brothers and sisters in Islam, when we are sincere, when we are truthful, this is the antithesis, this is the cure, subhanAllah, of lying, inshallah. Let's be of those people who only fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do all of our acts sincerely and purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and be like this man, subhanAllah, who sacrificed basically his life. He could have died easily in going to that hole. And then he didn't want any recognition from anyone else, but he was only seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we have that kind of a commitment, when we have that kind of a mindset, when we have that kind of an understanding, then inshallah we will be of those people who stay away from this big sin of lying, and that's the foundation of hypocrisy. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me and you tawfiq, inshallah, to follow this, to follow the words of the Quran and follow the words of the Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Let's make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا واخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إسرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين اللهم اجعلنا من المسلمين والمؤمنين والقانتين والصادقين والصابرين والخاشعين والمتصدقين والصائمين والحافظين فروجهم والذاكرين الله كثيرا اللهم اجعلنا من الآمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Ya Allah, accept our salah. Ya Allah, accept our deeds. Ya Allah, forgive us of our shortcomings and our sins and our mistakes. Ya Allah, protect us from the punishment of the grave. Ya Allah, protect us from the punishment on the day of judgment. Ya Allah, protect us from the hellfire. Ya Allah. Ya Allah, save us to Al-Jannah. Ya Allah, save us to Al-Jannah. Ya Allah, save us to Al-Jannah. Ya Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, we make dua for our brothers and sisters in the world. Ya Allah, help them. Ya Allah, alleviate the hardship, the pain, the suffering, the rancor, the oppression that they are going through. Ya Allah. Ya Allah, help our brothers in Syria and our sisters in Syria, in Kashmir, in Chechnya, in Palestine, in Egypt, and all the Muslim lands. Ya Allah. Ya Allah, help them and help us. Ya Allah. Ya Allah, give them sabr jameel and give us sabr jameel. Ya Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, make us amongst those who make shukr to you and not kufr to you. Ya Allah, make us amongst those who make shukr to you and not kufr to you. Ya Allah, make us amongst those who make shukr to you and not kufr to you. Ya Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, instill the love of this deen in our heart. Ya Allah. Ya Allah, instill the love of learning the Quran in our hearts. Ya Allah. Ya Allah, instill the love of knowing the sunnah of our beloved Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ya Allah, instill the love and the compassion of brotherhood and sisterhood in Islam. Ya Allah. Ya Allah, help us. ربي مقيم الصلاة ومن ذريتي ربنا وتقبل دعاء عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون ولذكر الله تعالى وعلى وعز وجل وتم وهم وأكبر وأقيم الصلاة